Welcome to Transformational Blueprints, the podcast that's here to tackle the big question. Why do so many transformation programs fall short, and what can we do about it? I'm Mario Michaels, founder and director of Synaxia Group, and I'm thrilled to have you join me. In this series, we go beyond theory, bringing you first-hand stories and insights from some of the world's top architecture and transformation leaders. It's all about sharing real-world lessons, sparking fresh ideas, and giving back to the architecture community. So whether you're looking to learn, be inspired, or stay ahead of the curve, grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive in together. Hi everyone, today we'll be talking with Dave Bamber about how to be a commercially driven architect. Dave's a commercially focused technical architect and manager with over 20 years experience working in either software as a product business or a consultancy business. He's currently the director of technical architecture for Crosslake Technologies. So Dave, welcome to the show.
Hi Mario, thanks for having us.
No problem at all. So where we always like to start is just a bit of background on yourself, how you got to where you are, Dave, and a little bit about Crosslake as well, just so we've got a bit of context to the conversation.
Yeah, great. So I guess I started as a software engineer kind of 20 years ago, I guess now, over 20 years ago. So I started as a kind of net engineer, really,
Yep.
And then kind of a junior engineer out of university, and then dabbled in some kind of mobile development. So some kind of quite old school mobile development then, kind of as Android was kicking off.
Yeah.
And then settled back into .NET engineer, working on some workforce kind of tracking applications. So we tracked kind of workers using GPS and NFC tags, and that was kind of cutting edge at the time. And then secure communication, so kind of proprietary encryption algorithms and messaging in the banking sector. And then around, I guess I've been in Technica, now Crosslake, for 13 years. Started as a .NET engineer there, tech lead, and then around 7 years ago, we had the opportunity to develop and establish our kind of consulting business. So that's largely was doing technical due diligence. So that's advising private equity clients, doing technical due diligence for them on their behalf as part of their investments. So I was doing that, build that practice with colleagues in Technica. And then about 2 years ago, we got acquired by Crosslake, who are a global organization who do very much similar things. So technical due diligence, largely in America, so North America, but global. And they acquired us, and we bring two capabilities to their organization, so we can kind of continue along the thread of doing the due diligence, and we can service our clients in EMEA. And then also we bring the build practice, essentially. So that's bespoke software engineering, helping our clients build solutions, new product engineering, and value creation work as well. So the work is split roughly kind of 50% globally for the organization, 50% technical due diligence, advising private equity clients, and then 50% kind of what we call value creation. So that might be new product development, it might be strategy work, it might be cybersecurity initiatives as well.
Okay. What we're doing in this series, thanks for that, Dave. What we're doing in this series is the guest previous to you on the show is asking a question, and I'm going to get you to ask a question at the end as well. But the question you've got from Dennis Mulder is, tell us about a situation where bad architecture contributed to a bad due diligence review in the PE space, knowing full well that where the business you work for and whatnot. So he was quite interested in that side.
Yeah, so I think maybe the first kind of thing is kind of, I suppose we often talk about how technology doesn't necessarily kind of is very rarely the kind of nail in the coffin for any investment. So most technology issues can be mitigated, can be remediated, they're not necessarily fatal. So whilst it kind of might make some awkward conversations, no one likes surprises. So I think one of the things that we might see is that a business might tell their investors that they've got amazing technology, and what we might find is that it's kind of not quite what they say. Is that leads to an awkward conversation. Very rarely kind of would kind of be the end of the deal at that point. The kind of there's obviously it's just that you need the business and the investor needs a shared understanding of what they're buying. We often talk about how it's kind of like a home buyer's survey. So I think it's kind of as long as you're going in with your eyes open, investors can become comfortable quite quickly with technology issues. So it definitely surprises are bad. I think as transparency is important. So and I think probably this might be a thread of some of the other conversations that we talk about, the kind of technology reasons, like very rarely technology decisions kind of malicious. It's kind of decisions were made in a time, in a context that it was the right decision at the right time. So kind of that's and obviously technology and architecture is a sequence of those decisions. So it's kind of just understanding where we are, the point in time, what needs to be done to allow the business to grow.
Oh, okay. What do you think makes a great architect in today's world, Dave?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's kind of about collaboration. So I think we're going to talk about soft skills kind of later in the call, but I think that ability to collaborate with various people, so and various levels of an organization, so from executives down to engineers and technical, non-technical people, and kind of bring all those people together and make the right technical decisions, the right decisions to support the business and the people who are using the technology. So I think first and foremost, it's someone who can at the very least understand those people, but also can also get those people to collaborate together, because I think the best decisions are made when they're not in isolation and there's a kind of a number of viewpoints brought to the table.
Okay. That probably brings us nicely onto the sort of topic, or the main topic of conversation, around how to be a commercially driven architect. So before we start, anyway, a good starting point is, what's your definition of commercial? Because it can mean a lot of different. It's one of those words that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yeah, I guess the fact of the matter is, kind of engineers, architects, kind of no one we wouldn't have jobs if the business wasn't successful. And I think by that we mean kind of making money, essentially. So
the word nobody likes to talk about.
Exactly. So I think for consultants that might be being chargeable to clients. So we might have utilization that we talk about, and for product businesses, essentially kind of they need customers who are willing to fork out for their product or service. So I think it's commercial. I see that is in support of the business. So the business is a commercial entity that needs to make money to survive. So I think that's kind of how I think about it.
Fine. Okay.
I wonder if you think there's anything different there, actually. I guess
not really. It is essentially about how can technology, for me in my world, how can technology be an enabler to a business either making more money or saving money. So whatever it is, it's increasing profitability to be successful, to then go and do what they want to do, whether that's reinvestment into technology again, or people, or whatever it may be. And I suppose architecture's always got that difficult job, because most architects come in right at the beginning of some form of program or change or transformation or whatever it may be, and they've got that difficult thing of balancing technical decisions with commercial decisions. And sometimes they've got to pick a piece of technology which might be slightly cheaper because it's moving the needle, rather than being the perfect option because that costs too much. So how do you find that balance between technical decisions with commercial objectives?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think obviously the worst thing you can do in that scenario is make decisions and I guess not be conscious about the decisions you're making. So I think I think you can imagine like it can be a perfectly valid decision to choose the technology because you've got experience with it. I think probably the thing you need to do in that scenario is just think about what are our alternatives, what are the other options that we that may provide some benefits. And I think as soon as you kind of have two options on the table, you can have a comparison, you start to have like kind of interesting conversations about kind of the benefits of one over the other. And I think that kind of leads to better decisions. And again, kind of bringing in multiple stakeholders into those conversations, not necessarily being a technical, technology only decision, and bringing other people into that decision. And once you've got the options and the trade-offs and it might be obvious, like kind of it might be as obvious as you first thought, but kind of once you've got some options on the table, you can have an interesting conversation, I think. And you often don't know how, I guess to the point before about collaboration, you often don't know how it's difficult to read people's minds, and you might assume that someone will be thinking one thing, but actually when you have the conversation with them, their kind of the priorities are somewhere else, and that opens an avenue to a different technology decision.
Okay. And what's, we're probably going to talk about this later, and you mentioned, being commercially aware, and part of what you've just said there in that answer is understanding the business objectives and understanding what the business does and how it makes it and so on and so forth. How do you develop commercial awareness in architects? Because it's a soft skill and it's really difficult to, I suppose, not categorize it, quantify it.
Yeah, I think in all our conversations, and when we're talking to clients and into each other, I think there's always this idea of like, why should I care, and like, so what? So you might talk to someone and they might have an opinion about a technology, and you're like, so what? Like, why should I care about that? Why does it matter? And I think it's that those kind of follow-on questions. So it's like kind of, I think architects will have instincts and experience to tell them that one technology is better than another, or kind of more suited than another to a particular scenario. But then I think it's the kind of the so what. So why does that matter? Why does that? What impacts does that have, kind of commercially? What impacts does that have to the business? And I think in terms of developing that in architects, I think it's just the kind of constant asking that question whenever you kind of make those statements around technology. It's like, well, why am I making this statement? What is the impact of the statement that I'm making?
Okay. And on that then, obviously half of the business works quite heavily, well, all of the business works quite heavily within sort of private equity or private equity backed businesses and so on. How do investment cycles influence architectural strategies, especially if the organization has got a short-term objective like exit in 3 years, for example? That may seem like a long time, but in terms of a technology transformation program, it's probably the minimum you'd say to deliver it. So how does that impact or influence architectural decisions and strategies?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts of that. So I think that the business, the technology team, they have to balance value creation and risk mitigation. So I think in terms of a 3-year strategy, you need to be moving the dial in both those areas. You need to be demonstrating that you are handling your risks appropriately, and you're also unlocking and adding more value, and you've got a kind of value creation strategy as well. I think there's always technical debt. There's always, no system is perfect. I think there's businesses and investors, are tolerant to systems with those issues. And I think that, no one expects to see at the end of a 3-year cycle the perfect system. I think it's what people need to be doing is balancing those two objectives and not over-indexing too much in one way or the other. Now, I think it might not always be a 50-50 split, right? So it might not be, you might, for a phase of growth, you might value, over-index to value creation and not worry so much about technical debt and risk mitigation maybe. And then in other phases of your growth, when you kind of maybe more mature, you have to index the other way. So I think it's we mentioned before about like conscious decisions, making conscious decisions, repositioning yourselves and allocating the right resources appropriately.
Okay, that makes sense, and it's a further sort of pillar to an understanding of a business, isn't it? Whether you're in private equity or whether you're working for a bank, you need to understand what the investment cycle is on, whether it's the business, whether it's the program of work, whatever it is, because you've got to deliver to that investment cycle essentially to then either release more funds to continue the program or change direction or whatever it may be.
And I think the reality is you don't need to, again, like it's all shades of grey, right? You kind of need to demonstrate progress in that direction. You don't always, you don't have to achieve everything and all that you want in terms of those two initiatives potentially.
Okay. Now you're quite au fait with agentic AI and solutions in that area.
I'm not sure that's the right word.
Well, how do you define agentic AI, and what potential does it have to transform industries?
Yeah, so I think this is a space that we as an organization see kind of industry heading in, and also kind of personally, it's something that is kind of very interesting. I'm very interested in. So essentially, we're talking about AI making, being autonomous AI. So making decisions potentially, without human in the loop. So kind of unleashing AI in some way or form. I guess there's maybe two variants. So there's kind of AI agents that you might think in terms of like a chatbot. So that could be considered an agent. And then there's also kind of a scenario that's more emerging around kind of multi-agent, so where you have multiple agents collaborating autonomously. And I think we're all, I think we're very used to, well, not I say very used, I think we're kind of getting comfortable now with the kind of the big monolithic models, and kind of the general purpose models. So the kind of household names. But I think more, collections of more specialist models, and kind of in that multi-model, multi-agent scenario. I think specialist models being deployed in specialist agents and collaborating together. I think there's potential there to unleash and kind of leverage the power of these AI models that are being developed.
What are the biggest challenges businesses are going to face in adopting agentic AI?
Yeah, so I think it's still an emerging technology. It's an emerging paradigm. I think if we think of the kind of monolithic agent, there's obviously some legislative, legal issues that people need to get comfortable with. I don't know if you've the kind of was it Canada Air? I think one of the airlines, the American Airlines, they got sued because their chatbot gave some wrong advice. So it's quite an interesting story, and so the chatbot gave some wrong advice, contradicting what was on their website actually, and they argued that the kind of it was a refund essentially, and if the rules were, they argued that the rules were clear and the AI was like a separate legal entity actually, but it was all on the same website, so the kind of the judge didn't see that. But so I think that people there's a lot that needs to get ironed out. I think it's the paradigm, the kind of user experience paradigms, I think are kind of not yet settled on. So I think people are quite comfortable with kind of chatbot that works in like a customer services kind of situation, but I don't think it always works in like in the field setting. So like kind of maybe if someone's in the field, an engineer in the field, kind of maybe they don't want to be necessarily using that sort of interface. They might augmented reality using audio and maybe some image processing as well. So those maybe they're different. So the user experience for the domain I think is kind of something that's kind of is emerging still. So that's another challenge. And I think the kind of in terms of some of this technology still, I don't know if you to the extent you use LLMs, but kind of hallucinations, reliability of those technologies, the accuracy of those technologies is still kind of needs to be.
And I suppose that's the risk, isn't it? I know as a sort of concept or as a technology, it's very much still in its infancy in terms of the new era of AI. I know it's been around since the 80s and whatnot, but in terms of what the more accessible AI. You mentioned a word autonomously right at the beginning around your definition, and like most, that scares me as somebody who's not really involved in how it all works. And I suppose that's going to be most of businesses, isn't it? The technology team that understand it, or some of the technology team that understand the agentic AI and how it can and can't work autonomously. And then there's the rest of the business, which are probably scared around the capabilities. How do you balance the risks and the rewards deploying agentic AI solutions?
Good question. So I think you probably start by looking at the rewards and kind of critically looking at the rewards. So, it's not going to be right for every scenario. So I think it's not the right tool for every job. So I think that's obviously where you start. I think you also have to, I think there is this kind of maybe misalignment that not misalignment, but kind of people think that AI, it's like they go on Chat GPT and they can create images, they can, have conversations with it. They think it can do everything. The reality is that kind of general artificial intelligence is, I don't know, debatable how far we are away from that. But that value that you're going to get, actually, you just need to narrow the scope. Okay, so kind of just focus on one use case, and you need to, demonstrate that there's value there in a specific technology, specific model. So it might be like, the obvious ones are like kind of sentiment analysis, some classification. Those are kind of, with the technologies are like pretty good at that. So it's building on those kind of, we've got this use case, we can do this, we can add this value in this specific way, and then building on that and expanding it.
Okay. Have you got any examples? And obviously we don't want to know any sort of confidential details, but any examples of where you've seen agentic AI being successfully implemented to solve real world problems?
So I think apart from the example, so I think that chatbot, I think that again is pretty proven now, a well-worn path. I think kind of some of the issues aside, I've heard of business that having pretty, I think that has had pretty dramatic impacts for a lot of businesses around customer services. So kind of just, literally kind of phones going quiet because chatbots are now handling the requests. So I think that's one example. I think more maybe cutting edge. I think I've seen businesses use agents for classification of kind of, trying to think how much I can say, but agents classifying, is it customer service? Classifying transcripts of text.
Okay.
So, and providing classification of text, and allowing where previously they would have had to have someone or the call handler classify what the call was about. Was it a complaint? And kind of AI agents can just take that off the plate of someone, and as long as we're pretty reliable accuracy as well.
Okay, perfect. And one thing from a talent perspective, thanks for that, by the way, that I'm really sort of passionate about is the architect. And I say the architect, I mean enterprise solution, software, technical, whatever the job title, whatever their role and responsibilities. It's not just about technical skills and experience. It's probably more important to have that balance of soft skills as well, whether that's, empathy, pragmatism, active listening, whatever. And you mentioned a few right in at the beginning of the episode around what you think makes a great architect. And every single person that answers that question, it is all around soft skills. And part of my job of sort of assessing architects is very much around, great, you've done a cloud migration, there's 50,000 people that have done that in the UK, fantastic. Actually, what are your communication skills like? What are your stakeholder management skills like? Give me an example around that, and so on and so forth. Why are soft skills like empathy and active listening absolutely essential for architects?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that point we were talking about before about the collaboration. And I think part of the architect's role is to certainly consider a number of different viewpoints.
Yep.
I think as people won't always tell you what they think or what they want. So for various different reasons. So I think the empathy and the listening and the ability to do that in various scenarios is critical to kind of getting the right answer essentially. So I think I don't think you can, without those skills you can't truly consider all angles that you need to do. Yeah.
And also build relationships, right? Because ultimately the person and people don't understand this, but I fundamentally believe architecture is selling. You're selling something of some sort, whether that's your design, whether that's your proposal, whatever it is. You have to be good at the storytelling, the selling bit. And to get buy-in, you need to have trust, and to have trust, you need to be able to build a relationship, and that comes from empathy, that comes from delivering previously, that comes from actually listening, not first level, second level, third level. It's getting right to the nooks and cranny of the problem, because you could go, if you don't do that, you could hear something else, go and put something together about problem A, when actually the real problem is all the way down in C and D. But you've got to really listen and ask different questions.
Yeah, I think you've got to kind of assume nothing. I think that's, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble kind of making the wrong assumptions. And I think as part of that, you've got to be comfortable asking stupid questions. But kind of, it's that kind of, you'll often hear people say like kind of, if I'm asking this, other people are thinking this in the meeting kind of thing, so, and that's kind of absolutely often the case.
No such thing as a stupid question, right? In our previous discussions, and I know you're not conscious, you're not bothered about me asking this, but you've described yourself as an introvert, and naturally, given your background as a software engineer, that would make sense, because most of the time it does. But how has that impacted your architecture career, whether positively or negatively?
Yeah, I think one of the ways, so positive or negative, I'm not sure I can say, but I guess I think, as I guess I've kind of got more comfortable with kind of saying that, being an introvert, I guess. I think and part of that kind of getting more comfortable with that is kind of seeing the benefits of it potentially. And I think, maybe to your point about kind of it going hand in hand with kind of being an engineer, I think it kind of, I think the being an introvert, being comfortable kind of in my own head, I guess, that allow, and what do I do in my head? It's being analytical and spending time considering problems, challenges, solutions. So I think I am an introvert, and because I'm an introvert, I spend a lot of time thinking about these things, and that's kind of a superpower to a certain extent. That someone that isn't an introvert won't necessarily do that in the same way that I would. So I think that's part of the part of seeing it as a strength, really. I think, rather than a challenge. And I think just, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with this, like with that as a kind of personality type. But I think it does have a challenge around, and again, I think this can be a benefit in terms of kind of pacing yourself. So kind of having to pace efforts in terms of, knowing that, something like this podcast is going to take probably a lot out of me mentally, and then just kind of being mindful of that kind of before and after the event. So I think it's, there's a few tricks to making it work for you, but I think you can make it work for you.
What there's going to be plenty of people out there who describe themselves as an introvert that want to move into a leadership position, and there's this stigma around, oh, you're an introvert, you can't be a leader kind of thing. Don't know where that's come from, but I do hear it quite a bit. But what advice would you give to somebody who would class themselves as an introvert, who wants to excel, not just be a leader, but actually excel in it, like you have to some extent?
Yeah, I think it's just maybe just kind of learning, you've getting comfortable with managing it. Maybe that sounds wrong, like it's something
Negative, but I see what you
yeah,
mean.
negative, but
It's
it's
yeah,
kind of,
working to your strengths basically.
leveraging it, yeah, and
Yeah,
kind of turning it into a positive. So, turning it into, the fact that I can spend hours kind of thinking about a problem on my own, and that is kind of that doesn't drive me too mad. Kind of
yeah,
that's kind of like a bit of a happy place. But then being mindful that kind of you have got to communicate, you have got to pop your head up above that parapet, and just then that kind of going back to the point about pacing and kind of managing that. So kind of just finding those techniques
yeah.
that kind of allow you to do that in the time that you need, and kind of apply and show get see the value from
Yeah.
the time spent kind of analyzing problems, and kind of in introverts kind of headspace.
Okay. And you mentioned communication there, and communication skills are massively important. And you, in our previous discussion, you said you actively had to work on your communication skills when you stepped into a leadership role. What did you do? What advice would you give to someone in a similar position? Were there any sort of practical steps that someone can do to improve their communication skills like you did?
I don't know there was any kind of one thing,
Yep.
or there is any one trick to that. I think it's being conscious continually that that it does require effort, and being again mindful of that. Yeah, I don't know actually. I think you need to practice.
Yeah.
So you need to a little bit of, you are to grow in any
Yeah.
way, you kind of need to put yourself kind of out of your comfort zone. So I
Yeah.
think it's back to our point about kind of it's doing that, but in a kind of safe way.
Yeah.
So that might be in kind of scenarios that you're around kind of people that you
Yeah.
trust, or otherwise. But I think you've got to. I personally have to continually push myself and be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think it's not something that, well, I've not yet got to a point where it's like, oh yeah, I can do that now. But it's kind of a continued effort.
You've got to think about it. I suppose the first bit really is knowing that it needs work, firstly, or knowing which areas need improving, or whatever. And then it's right now, what can I do with that? I need to push myself in that situation. I need to expose myself to this, I don't know, group over here, or whatever. It could just be anything, I suppose. Do you how do you identify good communication skills when you're hiring? That's always an interesting one, because everybody says on their CV, great communication skills, great stakeholder management skills.
Yeah, I think, we look, and this isn't necessarily um, hard to come by, but we, yeah, I suppose we want people with, you know, with opinions. Okay, so we're
Yep.
looking for people that are happy to communicate their opinions. But I think the bit that comes after that is then kind of a challenge to that. So kind of
Hmm.
comfortable being their opinions being challenged. And then so I guess in terms of what do you look for? You look for someone we can do that with, in like a friendly way, kind of,
Yep.
not kind of keeping calm in that situation when your opinions are being challenged.
Yep.
So someone who doesn't back themselves into a corner. I'm not sure that's the right word, but someone who doesn't kind of hold on too tightly to their
Get a
opinions
bit too
when
defensive.
challenged. Yeah,
Yeah.
too defensive. Someone who is open to hear, and it's someone that you can have a conversation with. I
Okay.
think, as I said, that it's all shades of grey. So I think it's someone who can understand that.
Okay, perfect. We're going to move on to our quick fire questions, and I think we've
Oh
already,
yeah.
yeah, touched on this topic. I think I know what the answer is going to be to this, as everybody else said. But what do you expect in 2025 will be a game changer from a technology perspective?
Okay, you're making me doubt what I was going to say now, but yeah. So I think AI AI will be a game changer. And
Yep.
I don't necessarily, what I mean by that is, or I was thinking about that is, it's not necessarily going to deliver huge amounts of value necessarily, but we're going to have to change the way we work, the way we think about problems. So I'm not seeing that as kind of it's going to solve all our problems. I just think we're going to need to adjust for it in our lives and in our ways of working.
Okay. What advice would you give to a newly appointed chief architect or director of architecture or any architecture leader, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it's around collaboration, you kind of that saying of kind of, you kind of go fast on your own, you go far with people, with multiple people. So I think it's that kind of bringing people with you, and as part of that, kind of when you're doing that, kind of don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Kind of, with a group of people, kind of, I think you can move fast if you kind of avoid that kind of perfectionist mindset as well.
Being pragmatic, isn't it, over perfection? Okay. Any advice you wish you'd received earlier on in your career, Dave?
Probably just enjoy the ride a bit more than maybe don't take everything so seriously. Probably.
Fair enough. From a talent perspective, what's the biggest change you expect to see in the architecture market over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I think this is probably broader than just architecture. So I think with the use of AI and also just maybe the economy as well, I think we see a lot of demand for kind of senior expertise, and maybe there's the side of that where kind of people, I guess Zuckerberg said this year, by next year he's kind of, or this year I think he's going to have all the kind of junior engineers, mid-level engineers, that work's going to be done by AI. So I guess in that scenario, kind of where do the next seniors come from? Where do the seniors come from if we we don't need the juniors and the mid-levels because AI is doing it all, or we can't justify kind of training those people. So where do those kind of that next generation of talent come from really, if we're kind of focusing the pyramid on the seniors and the top level?
It just creates a bit more of a squeeze at the top, doesn't it, or that senior level and above? Okay. As per, you got a question from Dennis Mulder at the beginning. What's your question for the next guest?
My question was, what kind of measures do you use to know that your architectural decisions are having the desired impact?
Okay. I'll ask that question to the next person. So, Dave, we've spoken about a lot here. We've spoken about agentic AI. We've spoken about soft skills. We've spoken about how to, and I think put those together, and you've probably got yourself a half decent commercial architect at the end of the day, isn't it? Because AI is on everybody's lips at the moment. So if you can understand the commercial impact AI can have on your organization or a team within your organizational department, that's probably the definition of a decent commercial architect. So thanks very much for a great discussion, some really good takeaways there for our listeners. But we have run out of time. So thanks for your time. And I look forward to getting this live.
Cheers, Mario.
And that's a wrap on another episode of Transformational Blueprints. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you found plenty of insights and takeaways to fuel your journey. If you enjoyed the episode, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could share it, leave a review, or give us a like. It helps us reach more people in the industry who can benefit from these conversations. Don't forget to follow Synaxia Group on LinkedIn to stay updated on new episodes. The links are in the show notes. Join us next time for more tips, strategies, and stories from some of the brightest minds in technology and transformation. Until then, take care and keep transforming.